computer. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Human Caring. Today I have another conversation with some great guests. I have the pleasure today of talking with two human beings that I know have dedicated a lot of time and effort in studying themselves, studying life, and they have been a big inspiration for me for a long time, and still a big inspiration. So welcome, Per and Lucy, all the way from London.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I really want to talk about many subjects, so I hope it kind of will make sense how let's see what the direction this conversation will take. I thought that we can start with, it seems to me that when I look at myself and my process and people around me, it seems like we have a current way that we are and we kind of, the way we structure. And then I have a feeling that there is a certain potential in us. And there is a certain learning process there to see myself and to realize that there is a certain potential of a human being. Can you maybe tell me something about it from your experience?
Well, one thing that comes to mind when you share that question is about listening. So I think we probably, all of us share that there are moments where we have a sense of that there are other possibilities, that there's an inner voice that usually isn't heard because we're so busy with things around us and maybe busy trying to be ourselves as we think we should be, busy pursuing aims that we either ourselves or others have put in front of us, sort of running away from ourselves. But there are moments where, and that can be moments where one is trying sincerely to share something, where maybe that there's a chance to, you say listening, but you're sort of aware of maybe that there is another reality that what is sort of in front of my eye as I see it is not all of it. It's not everything. And sometimes it can be described differently. You get a hunch, maybe. And sometimes that hunch is so strong that you simply somehow have to respond to it, listen to it, be under the influence of it, and how that of course takes somehow some courage because is it true? Is it not? There will be there's so many voices in one that start speaking, that make it potentially more difficult. That was sort of my first associations in that relates to that question. Listening.
Can I pick up on listening? Because
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because I was thinking about in the context of my experience as a teacher in a school, and we talk so much about young people realizing their potential and kind of trying to see that every kid who comes into your classroom has the same potential, has the potential to reach kind of what their possibilities are. And of course it's really difficult because they're all, their playing field is at a different level when they come in, really. And what you say about listening, that really struck a chord, because it's something I've really seen, especially when I've observed other people teaching, that if I try to think, what is it that makes me think, oh, that's a good teacher, it's when I see them listen. So if I see a young teacher really listening to what the students are saying and building and drawing on that, rather than just imposing their aims and ideas, then you feel then there's something really kind of proper and important can happen. And that also you sort of know those moments in a situation like that, where there's a different kind of listening going on in a room, and another kind of atmosphere, I suppose, can happen, which is interesting. Maybe listening kind of creates an environment where something more honest can happen, or something can open.
That is very beautifully put, because when I think about it, you touch it about a teacher. I mean, yes, we have education system, and it seems like we have an idea what the purpose of this education system and what do we need to achieve with it. And I'm more and more asking the question, beside the content that being taught, what is the importance of the environment, the learning environment, and the role of the facilitators? And we can talk about learning process in different contexts, but if we take education, especially on young minds, on very shapeable human beings that, like you said, are growing, and what responsibility it is actually to allow the growth without kind of without knowing that you limited the growth. So it's really, I think it's such an important issue you're touching about. What does it take to have a very kind of learning environment, that what it takes to bring potential without limiting what that means?
One thing that comes from what you're saying, Lucy, is actually maybe the starting point is that you have to give. So if you're listening, you're giving an attention. You're stepping a bit aside, aren't you? Because you're not imposing anything. That you're giving something. You're giving attention. You're giving space. You're giving something of yourself. We don't know what it is, and that's not important in this case. But and I think very often the problem of learning something is that there has to be space for it. I have to be receptive, and usually very often I'm not, because I'm basically full of a lot of things, and maybe we are all brought up more in the name of taking, achieving, this sort of result thing is maybe unbalanced a bit. So we're not in the best position of really learning something. And even, if you're the teacher, you're the one teaching something, if you're not aware of that you're giving something and not imposing, I think, the relation is not proper. And of course, the relation to another human being is also your relation to yourself, and it is also an internal relation, isn't it? So the thing of giving is already suggesting that you are somewhere else in yourself than if you're imposing. It goes all the way, even to give a treatment, whereas your inner attitude, and it shows in the body, in everything. And so the same with the teacher, of course. And we know everything. That's the interesting thing. Something in us know everything immediately. We might not be consciously aware of it, but we pick it up. And everything responds in us. So if you're very tense, I get tense, and if you're breathing only very shallow, I start breathing very shallow, and so on and so forth.
It's very, for me, it's very to the point that of the connection, of the relationship, and kind of somehow we've been taught, and when I talked before, there is like the current condition and there is a potential. I feel that the more I wake up to see that something in me is taught that there is a separation, that there is, and that leads to competition and comparison. And talking about school, there is a lot of pressure in order to be a success and not to become a fiasco from a very early age. And it's kind of coming into all the rest of our social organization and the healthcare of being good and to make it right and without any flaws and without any mistake. And I feel what you're talking about, the taste of potential, is to see that, to become more attentive to see that, and to see that there is, in one level, it's part of my story, but the more I'm listening to it, then there is some more space, and in that space there is a potential of different relationship that can bring something else than what known. Does that make sense?
Yes. It makes me think about form and formlessness, about everything we're saying, and I think there's always, for me, this balance between kind of imposing some kind of structure or something that is a form, to allow this unknown or sort of formlessness to appear, and I mean, I find it really interesting to talk about it, actually, because so I teach drama, so it's a subject where you historically you in a way you're kind of giving some material that's very open and allowing the response to come and something to be formed and kind of created and through a sort of journey, and yet there's always this balance of having to kind of put a restriction in, so there's something to fight against, to find a new, unexpected, and the sort of for something new to appear or be created, you have to give some kind of, I don't know, shape, so that it can either be fought against or filled, or and it's such a balancing act to kind of sense what the right amount to impose, or I don't know what the word is.
A crack in the boulder.
It's a bit, a crack in the boulder.
That's the thing also with the improvising. We sort of brought up in a way that we are afraid of that whatever comes in as a surprise. But in the name of what we're trying to share now, you really want the sharks, because they can sort of break the shell that I'm caught in. I'm caught in myself completely, in how I think, my habitual way of doing things, and then a gift comes, and I can say either yes to it or I can say no to it. We brought up to say no to it. We hold on to what we have instead of, wow, yeah, oh, are we going that way? Okay. Yeah, see, and that's, again, of course, coming back to a relation to the world around me and in myself, of course. and you know, the if we're talking about the drama and really good improvisers, they say yes to whatever is coming, and what you're learning, what you're taught, basically as an actor is, you know, to the stage is an open space, and you receive impressions. If you are afraid of it, nothing will happen, because you're of course stuck in your fear. But something will come there. The more open you can be, it's how nature is. That's how nature works. If there's you know, an empty space, something will fill that empty space. It's a law in nature. We need vacuums, but we brought up, I think, all of us, to be afraid of the empty space, of the unknown, of what you said, the formlessness.
Yeah.
So because maybe also because we can measure the form, we could say this is it, and that relates to, you know, one of my hemispheres in my brain, right? That, you know, we can measure, but there's another part of our brain which is much more relational. You know, it's a bit like the consonants and the vowels. We have the structure, but there's a life that flows in it, and we are all of that. You know, we need both.
I think, and the last thing you said, we also that, you know, it's like this kind of a notion that there is two there, and one part of me is designed, including my brain and my nervous system and everything, to kind of survive, and it survived with the help of recognizing danger and being afraid, and whatever. My life was formed by my experiences, and it seems to me that if we talk about healthcare system or education, it's a lot about this kind of the one that you can measure. I don't know how to put it, but you know, this part of that is formed. And it is form, and it's language, and it's ideas, and all the expectation, that everything we kind of learn, and then there is another part that I don't know too much about, and I feel that, especially when I witnessed in the healthcare system, that movements, in embodiment movements, mindfulness comes in, you know, and trying to work with how we're being formed, you know, with depression, with which belong to this part, how much it's important not to neglect the origin of those kind of traditions that try to bring the other part of I don't know, but because we need this safety, but somehow this, like you talked before, Lucy, about some kind of balance, I feel safetyness is a really thing that is important in order to let go. And as a facilitator, or probably as a teacher, I never know what the right balance is. Like you said, something need to respond, not to meet myself in order to meet others, and make myself stand aside so something will respond to the situation. You relate to that?
Yeah, I think as you're talking, I kind of almost can feel myself in a class when I know it's good. When you're listening, and you're seeing what's happening. Ah, okay, feed a bit more in, drip. So you're in it all together somehow, and I think that for me is when I think something really happens, and that the people feel that they've been seen. So they know, oh, I've contributed this, and it's been noticed, and then more can come. It becomes more sort of fertile in a way. Or I think that's important too, that people feel that they're seen.
What is the act of seeing? What effort it required?
Well, maybe it is something of that stepping back, when you step back in a particular kind of way, and also about energy. I think I don't know. I'm just, but The other thing that came into my thinking when we've been talking is about space and time, and I think something that certainly in the institution that I'm living in, there's no time or space. Everyone is just and there's a fear. I think you said something, Pierre, that made me think of that sort of fear of stopping and seeing what happens. And again, I know that for me, if you own your space enough that you dare to sort of say kind of, okay, well, we're not going to do anything for a bit, let's see what happens. Or, I mean, that's quite radical actually in this society, and especially in the world of educational. So sort of listening, seeing, stopping. You do that when you're giving treatments.
Yeah, yes, of course. And it's so interesting this, because one of the things I think that could be in the way is that you know that you have the answer, you know, and that comes also to health in terms of a treatment, or what we call it. So of course you need to know quite a lot, and then at the same time you in the meeting, in the actual meeting, you somehow have to be willing to sacrifice it all also, because in the name of a relation. I just want to add something to this conversation, which might be helpful. As you know, Shlomi, I had a, what we call it, project where I was interviewing people about. So I asked them about a childhood memory that stood, you know, that was still very, very alive. So I interviewed a lot of people, including you, Shlomi, and Lucy, about that, and a lot of very powerful sort of situation came forward, you know, and they all had a clarity to them, and they all stood forward as having an importance in the life of people. And I think this is interesting in this conversation, because what happens when we grow up and we become adult, you know, and we are passing this stage, I think it's fair to say that the thing that was more prevalent when we were children, you know, so what we then later call a subconsciousness, it sort of gets a bit buried in us, but it's still there. And a lot of art, if not all of art, is in a way a communication, giving a form, communicating in a form which relates to the subconsciousness. So in a way, I feel what we're talking about is also how can we also include that, you know, in a sort of a more whole presence of our attitude. So that in a way brings back to the listening thing, because you ask what can we do, and of course we have to try to make an effort of a kind. And in some drama exercises, you know, you can give some exercise or in painting things, you give some help, but also some obstruction, all in a way in a help to open up towards that. And then of course you also need to acquire certain skills so that it can express itself through us. Our mind has to be, you know, informed in a way, our feelings, our body, if we're expressing it like that. But that's the way it expresses that energy and that consciousness. So I just feel that's really important. Also standing there giving a treatment, that you have, you know, in a way that everything is there. Everything is there. Healing is there. So there's something in the way of it. And to the degree we can relate to that, we already very taking a big step. And yeah, again, coming to listening. So I don't know if this is bringing too many subjects into the whole part, but if you, as you are mentioning health, And then, of course, suffering and pain is suddenly, an issue we need to address, because it's a language. It's something that's trying to communicate something. I think one has to look at it like that. And in the name of what we're sharing now, what is it then? What is it? What is it if we have a pain, you can't really locate what it is? What is it trying to say to you? What is it that I have to listen to? And how do I have to see it? And of course, it's obvious that it's related to the nervous system in a way, as you introduced now. But what is it that makes it not malfunctioning, dysfunctional? What is that, and how does it express, and how can I listen to it, and how can I address it then? And how can we, we're not healer. I mean, I don't see myself as a healer, but as someone who can, be present there and maybe help, of a direct experience of it, which is not blinded by my opinions about it, and especially that I want to get rid of the pain. I want to be the same person who arrived to the treatment and the same who is leaving just without pain. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't. Well, sometimes, if it's just something, and you can get a little massage, fine. But the kind of pain that, wants to tell you something, you're another person when that's gone. You have to be another person, not another person, but differently related.
It's interesting because while you were talking, I could really felt a call to listen to my body, myself, my breath while I was listening to you, and in a way, it's very special experience because you bring questioning in a way, like really a potential of letting go of the need to know the answer, and the more importance to open up to a question, if it's regarding my pain, regarding to my current situation of life condition, and while I was listening, then kind of crawled in, and oh wow, I'm here, kind of listening. This kind of something that I know is not there usually, but I recognize it because it's not the first time when it's like feeling, I might call it a feeling with lack of a better word, of kind of wondering, being a question, just a wondering. I don't know, there is something going on and it exists. Wow, it exists, there is existence. And I feel that we are very ready to get answers, to reach, to have a resolution, and this kind of quality of listening and the opportunity it gives to be just receptive is the healing in a way that allows to see the same thing just from a different place, that give it a completely different perspective, and by that allow things to happen by themselves in oneself without doing. And I cannot control this kind of act of listening. I just see that it's remarkable. It's not usual. And as a teacher and as a body therapist, I think there is a wish in me that somehow we will understand more and more how important to bring that part into our professional relationship, basically in every work environment, family environment, because the space, which both brings space and safety, and is actually the opposite of aggression in it. So just to share with you the experience I had while you were talking.
Yeah, Shlomi, you use that word understand. I mean, you are standing under something. In Danish, it's you're standing in front of something, right? Forstå. And somehow that's what we are. That's what we are, isn't it? There's some something amazing of the human nature, which we are questioning is or sharing. As it comes back to the form and the formlessness, that we are containing both, aren't we? Actually are invited, I suppose, or given the opportunity to live both. It is as if everything is like that, even here in our language, as we speak. And yeah, that's what we somehow forget, that something is passing through us. I mean, the simple thing, like we mentioned breathing now a couple of times, and I would usually say I'm breathing, but it's probably equally true to say I'm being breathed. Something, because I'm not breathing, I'm not aware of breathing most of the time, unless I really make an effort to try to be aware of it, right? So there's just something that's passing through us all the time that we're not aware of, but that is part of being human. So that's again the things that are in between we're sort of trying to address, right? We sort of focused on the dots, but not what's between the dots quite. But now we're talking about maybe a bigger scale, aren't we, in terms of more inclusive, including more and more, including, not knowing it also. But you can't do that with your knowing mind, can you? So it's sort of a tricky thing. If, as we say, you can actually experience it, so it's not an idea, it's not a philosophy. And that comes back to the relation and listening, that as we're trying to bring in an effort, an act of trying to listen, it does attract something. It attracts a potential of a finer listening, which is not my doing. I can only bring the effort of trying to listen. But then, because we're trying to share that, something finer, it's as if I get a little bit more sensitive. And it's not me who's doing sensitizing myself, but I'm bringing an effort, and then that is sort of given to me. I give something else is given to me. I don't give it in order to receive. I have to just.
I always, I feel that I keep forgetting it, and caught by the story of whatever I'm doing. And I remember you said to me one time, when we talk about to remember, remember to be, and when we talk about relationship and we talk about separation, there is something in it, in this process of kind of remembering the possibility of listening, that allow you to become a member of this inclusiveness. And I feel that the only chance I have to relate to another person, nature, or myself from a different place is if I remember the possibility of it, and the more I see the necessity of it, because I feel the frustration of knowing it's there, but I'm not there. It's like we're just around the corner, the possibility to listen, but it's so rare, and it's painful to feel that, like you said, in between, kind of, and most of the time it will lead me to kind of, but I need to do it, and it's kind of taking me even further away from this kind of very subtle, not adding but letting go of something. How can we help people to see that, or facilitate this process?
I was thinking about you know, if you're working with a group of people and about how you create conditions where there's a sort of fluid movement or a kind of freedom, safe, trusting, and it just makes me think about some times when I've had where you feel the whole room is kind of one organism made up of all these separate individuals, and it can happen in all kinds of circumstances in life. But I think there's just these sort of magical moments sometimes where everything, like all the little cogs, kind of click into the same receptivity. And I think I think there are times where it's possible that can be facilitated. Most often not on to quite that. But I really know that I've had moments in my life where, for whatever reason, you feel the environment that's been created allows maybe, I don't know, 10, 30 people in that room to, and that everyone kind of knows it as well. And I certainly think in theatre or in those where you there's sort of there's something sound in the room almost when that click of shared whatever, maybe listening, I don't know, is there. And for me, that's I think what I strive for, is to be in a state in myself where I can just let that place open up in a way that people can function. And I never really know what it is. I'm not very good at analysing what, especially thinking if I've been, sometimes in my life I've been in training other teachers or this, and I've never been very good at kind of going, well, these are the, but I think there are. And even, you know, it can happen in an airport or a supermarket, or just those, occasionally you have those moments where you just feel, oh, I've been in this shared space with a lot of people and this sort of unknown something just descended for a minute.
Why is it important for our life? Or I mean, is it important? Does it have effect on our organism? This kind of moment, as you say, a magical moment.
Well, I think so, but I mean, I don't know.
Well, wow, you're bringing a lot of big questions slowly. But you said that, of course, that relates to what you just asked about the facilitating and all that, and what Lucy said. And I think just before that, you actually said something I thought was really interesting, that there is this part that sort of know of this other reality we're talking about, and when you're not there, you suffer a bit from that. We can say that you're sort of longing. You know, it's not often we are there, but there can be a longing, you know, and a deep feeling for, you know, as if one is, you know, one is sort of not there quite. But of course you can't quite say you're not there if it's not because you are not taught by it, but it is as if, you know, it's not quite there. So if you, as a facilitator or a therapist or a teacher, have this sort of a hunch of a question, maybe of, in the name of what am I actually standing in this position, playing this role of a facilitator or therapist or a teacher, you know, then you're communicating that. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind about that is shared somehow. If you have a question and you not formulated it, you know, in a smart way or anything, if you are almost breathed by a question, i.e. suffering, the absence of something very often. You're sharing that. And so whatever you are attempting to do will be influenced by that. And so sometimes that's almost intuitively, right? You say a good teacher, why is, some teachers have just made an everlasting impression on us, right? Others not. And for me, it's because they brought something over, and you can't quite define what it is, but it has a major influence on you, and you love them for something that you can't quite say what is. And yeah, I think I do go to the theater just for that one moment. It might be a split second. And for the 35 years I was an actor, it was just for that split moment where you are united with the audience and you are breathing with them. And it's not your doing. You go in and as an actor, and you of course have to launch into something and a story and all that. But then when the audience really get attentive and listening, then you forget all about that you're an actor. Because everyone forgets, in the usual way, and we come into a common space, which is what we're all longing for. I bet we could sign that paper. I'm ready to sign it.
But I think that's it. I mean, my experience over many years with lots and lots of different teenagers doing drama and doing plays and there are moments where everyone just loves it and then there are these other moments where people kind of say sort of, wow, what was that? There's sort of acknowledgement that what we've all shared is beyond words or the usual, and like a sort of almost a shared secret. And that it's very good to talk. It's re-inspiring me about why I've stuck with it all those years, because those moments are they don't happen very often, but they're really all the time. When one has these kind of conversations, you're sort of talking around this thing that you can't really put words on or kind of talk about really, but it's funny searching for that.
It seems to me it's also kind of a food we need, those kind of moments.
Yeah.
And in a way we grew up to believe that and it is in some level that we are very rich societies that are very privileged, but I feel like that in a way we also deprive from understanding of the necessity of this kind of food, unless one kind of stumble upon it because of life situations somehow, and lucky enough to see that it's a real possibility, and it's as important as a real food or it's like organic need. And I think that you said something before, Per, I feel like this kind of sense of awe and wonder, it's also connected to the ability to really being touched by life, and being touched in a different way that we're used to. It's a different relationship, like when you brought this suffering and pain, or when I look at myself and I see my whole idiocy of addiction or whatever, or not addiction, it's like what I see that I don't like or do like, or expectation or whatever, this to be touched of the just to listen to that, without judging it, without kind of, and to allow it to have this movement, and slowly see that there is something that is, I cannot put a name or put the finger, but the one makes the other visible somehow, also the invisible, and I think that it's a potential of every relationship that is there. Yeah, and that's this. It's like when I think about my children, what kind of wealth I want to give them, what kind of life I want them to have. I see that as a responsibility without even know how to, but as a calling.
Yeah.
It's a lot of what we're talking about you can see in the children, isn't it? We just forgotten it, but maybe we have a chance to reconnect.
They teach me. It's not the other way around.
Exactly. If you're listening and watching,
Yeah.
Yeah.
This sense of wonder again. It's like the sense of, wow, this whole world is just, you know, a playground. Somehow for me, this playground became to be a better ground, you know, both when I'm alone or when I need to relate or to present something. And this kind of coming back to this, it doesn't matter kind of, you know, bring this relationship that it's very freeing to know that whatever I think it's matter, it's not really matter, and I can just play.
That of course brings something in, because the difference also, we're grown up and supposedly meant to be responsible. No, I don't, the question. The next question is responsible for what? I mean, the ability to respond, which relate maybe to what you said before, is about of being touched by something. I mean, so there's a responsibility to try to be able to respond. I mean, how I live my life and how I try to educate myself, or being educated, being influenced, receiving informations and impressions and experiences. But then, of course, when all that more obvious is said, then comes a bigger question, maybe, as a human being, what's my responsibility? I mean, what is it? Because we sort of addressing that a bit, aren't we? Do I? Is there a deep raison d'être, you know, in Pierre, in Slomi, in Lucy, that, you know, that is calling, that I need to listen to, and as consciously as possible try to I don't know what the right word is, fulfill, or, you know, that's a big thing. I mean, that's a big question for me. And of course, mentioning it is because the children has an access to something that we lose. That's how I see it, at least. And but then we can sort of relate to it as grown-ups, and then comes the big why. What's the why? There's a why behind this, what we're sharing, and yeah, isn't there? Then you sort of, that's again coming back to that. There's something deep in one that's calling for one's attention. It's just a weak voice most of the time, and I don't hear it, and that's where I need the crack in the boulder, you know, something that some circumstances or some happenings or help to listen to that voice in myself that is trying to make me respond. You know, I think that's related to health also, if we're talking about that. And actually learning, because why? Okay, I have to learn something so I can pay my bills, and that's a very good course. But there's also another, and that's related to life and being a human being. So of course, I wouldn't the only question of being, which is what we're talking about in a way. Beingness and isness. And coming back to how I listen to how, you know, if I have a pain or if I have a suffering, where how do I live that? How, you know,
I think that question of how do I relate to the body is so major and important question in the West. I mean, it's for all humanity, but as living in the West, you know, we have a certain relationship to our body, and I think that the beginning of the, I don't know if the beginning, but it's essential part of this validating listening and bringing it to one's life is the beginning of listening to the body in a different way than what we used to, and seeing how much we actually do not listen, and how much we have a preconceived ideas. And again, we think we're in the body, but we're actually occupied with ideas and reaction to it, and the ability to begin to listen, and that demand also to accepting to receive it without kind of denying it or tossing it around or do something about it. Not a problem to solve. It's information I can listen to. It's kind of a door to see that there is such a rich inner life that's going on with different language, and somehow I never taught to listen. And there is something that can understand that, and something apropos the food, something really wants to know about myself and about life. Don't you say that to start with the body, it's a good starting point?
I think the one way to say it is also, well, interesting. So how would I experience that my, you know, one thing is this, I listen to my body. How would I experience that my body is listening? You know, that coming back to what you said about the remembering, you know, the word means to come back to the body, actually, to the members of the body. That's what the word means. So what does that actually mean? What's coming back to the body? How do I experience that? As you say, often I think I'm in the body, but I'm in the head. But how do I really experience a body listening? Where would I be positioned in myself to receive that impression? And what is myself in that respect, of course. But I think that's, for me, enormous questions. And I also remember when I first time really had that question in me, and it suddenly became really important. And it came from exactly what you're describing, realizing that I'm not in my body, I'm in my head, thinking I'm in my body. And I just felt I really had to fall into my body. It must be possible, you know, to just that sort of hunch of that another experience of well, living in this body is possible, even though I didn't had it. That's one thing. And the other thing is maybe the other way around. How would I know that everything we're talking about is not just a fantasy, imagination? I think the only help is the body. To say this is not just a dream. It's not, you know, because my mind, I can persuade myself to anything, you know, that whatever. So of course it's opening this thing of listening to say, okay, so it's not just listen, obviously not just listening with my ears. Do I also have inner ears? You know, what can I listen with my body? Can I listen with my heart, with my feelings? What is that vibration? When being, what? There's so many questions, and if they really start to matter, if they matter, then there's fire. And when there's fire, something can happen to us.
Yeah, I feel that it's amazing for me that even though we do not sit in the same physical room, that somehow something is kind of moving. That's my experience, back and forwards, kind of, and it's a certain help. There is something that, yeah, I can describe it in words, but something is more possible for me now than it was before I talked with you, and I think that's it's an opening for, in our present time, whatever we talked about, what is lacking in a way, what the potential, what is possible for us. I feel, and another question is, how can I relate to the facts of this is the conditions of life, and kind of offering some kind of help that can reach people that maybe that are ready in some way. And I find this very encouraging, this kind of meeting, even though it's a long distance between us. Do you share this kind of question about that need?
Yeah, yes. I mean, that's the whole Zoom thing is of course an interesting. So one of the things you say, I think, coming together, like in a learning situation or a treatment or in a theater, or coming together, I think is really something fundamental as humans, and something can happen that is more than me, that is the between us, the commonness. There's something extraordinary in that. And yes, something can happen in the Zoom, but we mustn't neglect the fact also, Shlomi, that we have been together in the same room with you. We sort of, we've shared some things, right? And I think we touch upon that when we're sitting talking now. We're not totally stranger to each other, but yes, certainly we've had many experiences with a Zoom, that you can share something that opens the question of course, sort of the measure of distance, and what can actually be related in this way, even though we're not in the same room. But certain things can't. Certain things is just, you have to be present, and we don't know quite what that kind of exchange of matters is between us, but we are communicating. And obviously we can see part of your body, and something is received of that just from your posture, your breathing, your tensions or not tensions, to the extent we are aware of it or not aware, but something pick up. But it's different if we're in the same room. But I agree with you. And this is what we can do now, right? And it's really important. I think it's very good and very important.
I feel that there is a lot of food here, and I can sense that I'm beginning to lose my attention slowly with the amount of materials that being exchanged here. Is there anything else that you want to use this opportunity to say or to talk about?
The only thing I just to address that I think talking together at this point in time with what's going on in the world, for me, is quite strong, because a lot of the things that we've said, I think this, especially in the UK, the pandemic and the fact that we were just stopped in the middle of all our usual way of functioning and driving in this direction, to particularly in my school and the students who were heading towards these really important examinations, and suddenly they're just stopped and it's not happening and we can't meet physically, and a sort of a stop that's been put in place. I think it's a very extraordinary, well, we keep saying unprecedented, but it's a very, very extraordinary time that opens up a lot of thinking in people, I think, and pondering about some of the things that we've been talking about, which maybe have not really been pondered about, and that we're in the sort of education institution that is driven by routine and structures and knowing exactly what's happening the next day and the next month and the next year, and suddenly no one knows what's happening. It's very powerful, and I think there's something quite hopeful in some ways, and also something quite frightening. Very powerful times going on in the world.
Yeah, there is a certain opening, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the same time, I think it's kind of like we talked, it's this kind of a balance that something is, you lose something and there's an opening that something else show itself to you in a way. And then I really hope that people will have the support to have enough safety and contact in order to be able to meet it in a way that will give some fire to their own search.
Yeah.
That was my intention with this kind of a production.
It's very difficult sometimes to discern. The thing you're bringing forward about the safety, which you also did earlier on, which is obvious. That is the beginning in a way. If you're not in a safe environment, then nothing will happen. And the treatment, sometimes that takes a while before that is established. I mean, really that the client really trusts the therapist, and then something can happen that couldn't happen before that. And the same with the drama, and the same with the teaching. Yeah. But it sort of creeps in weird ways. I mean, you could say that school and the whole exam and all that is all things that's based on fear, not safety. So the motivating factor in big part of our life is fear. We're not aware of it. We call it all kinds of things, career and God knows what. But it's fear. And yes, we haven't talked about the nervous system very much, but we know what that's going to do, and it limits the way you function, right? And you sort of, at least only in some departments, and so yeah.
The capacity of listening is kind of become very limited, if it's not impossible, when the surviving takes over with the nervous system. And it seems like, again, like you said, in order to have opportunity to listen more, we need to feel safe that something can come a little bit down. And also in any kind of learning process, as we talked before, I mean, if I need to learn something, I need to be in a position where I don't need to fight, or my body is not reacting to the stimuli that's going on, that I can be myself. I've been seen and I've been met as I am. There is no demand on me. There is nothing that kind of threatens me. Because as you said, it's not something that I can decide. It's the body that communicates the situation. It could be a particular face, a tone, or whatever. And while we begin to study that and realize that we can, if we listen to how our body reacts to a situation, we can work with it by listening to it and allow ourselves to be in more optimal, receptive situation, platform, in order to study something new, in order to let go and see more clearly that what we call safety is, it's kind of, there is some fake safety in it, and a lot of, and the fear is such a huge drive in us. Surviving it's like a law going through us.
A lot of the things that we call habits are sort of fake safety, isn't it? You know, here in the UK, the more hours you work, you know, the more what do you call it? Then you're a bloody hero over here. Whilst if you come from Denmark, you just think, my goodness, they're insane. You know, because anyone would know that you're not productive when you're working 10 hours a day. I mean, it's seen from a Danish perspective, bonkers, right? But it's a habit over here. It's a working ethic, and you can't just change it. But a lot of what we're talking about is in a way of changing habits, which is a fake safety thing. You know, it's scary. It's very scary to change a habit. Yeah, but very often we're caught in a habit that is not healthy for us. It might even kill us. Probably very often does.
And at the same time, whatever you resist will persist. You know, it's not. I mean, to change a habit, again, this kind of a whole having a new relationship and seeing it. I feel that, you know, like it's bring the whole question of change, how to create change. And I feel more and more that the more I try to create change, the more I try to change my habit, the stronger they grow on me. And it's more a question of them quitting on me than I can quit them in a way. And this quitting it's about just clarity more and more. And like you said, a new relationship, and kind of we coming back to what we started with, the kind of to see the current situation, the factual situation, our condition, and slowly see a potential of something else. And both are important. The clarity about those two.
I mean, we come back to how you relate to it, right?
Yeah.
And if you see for fight or flight mode, not good. That's maybe not the way to relate, but to relate to it. Well, yeah, it's very interesting.
Per and Lucy, it's been amazing to talk to you and see you, despite the distance. Thank you so much for taking the time and for listening and sharing with me. And I hope if somebody out there curious or receptive, it might be a help in somehow, some way.
Yeah, we never know.
Never know.
Likewise, you know, it always goes both ways.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you for today, and hopefully till next time.
Feels like the beginning.
Yeah, it does. I hope so. I feel the kind of a drive going that way. It's just the beginning of something. I don't know quite yet what, but it's a beginning, and it's kind of, I just need to let it do its job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.